Tomi Lahren over at Fox saying something that either she believes or that she thinks her audience might believe, that Republicans have fumbled the economy, they've failed dismally. The party, the grand old party, she says, has become a, quote, utter embarrassment. Now, Trump is facing a real lesson on the problems at the war front. Remember back in the George Bush era, Ari Fleischer, who was the spokesperson during the other very controversial Iraq war that, of course, set the predicate, the reason why Trump had run against exactly this type of Middle East engagement, Ari Fleischer criticizing Trump on Iran.
That's why this has become so dizzying, and the bigger problem is it leaves it up to Iran to determine America's next move. If Iran attacks our ships, then we'll go back in. If Iran doesn't, we won't. It's getting hard to keep up with what our motives are here and what our end game is here.
As for the current end game, politically, when you look at the midterms, well, there are clear signs about what voters do when they're unhappy with this kind of war. In the 2006 midterms, Democrats took back the House and Senate. It was memorably described as a thumping by then President Bush. That was his way of acknowledging a big loss. The current president does not acknowledge loss. He lies about it. He sows misinformation and distrust. And as we've seen recently, he tries to fund, support, pardon, even violent attacks on the election outcome. So if there is a thumping, don't expect this president to acknowledge it. Now, as for what we're watching tonight, Democratic primaries in Wisconsin and Minnesota have progressives against what are considered the more typical or establishment Democrats. That is a kind of contrast we're seeing in increasing places that really matters, because some of these liberal candidates who might have been seen as perhaps unelectable or beyond the fray a decade ago are now not only electable, they're winning their primaries. How they do in the general is the big question. But on the Republican side, there's Mike Lindell, the controversial MyPillow CEO, who lies about elections and has cozied up to that sort of conspiracy wing of the MAGA party. He wants to get the nomination for governor in Minnesota. The broader story is Republicans are facing an economic reckoning and a very energized Democratic set of candidates. With that in mind, we want to start off our election night coverage tonight with Jay Komanduri, who's an Obama campaign veteran, and Elisa Ellman, who's a U.S. Army veteran, worked at the VA, and found herself sort of more in the fray than she might have counted on or planned for because of Elon Musk's brief but controversial tenure at the so-called DOGE program, which led to those layoffs. She is now the Democratic candidate taking on a Republican incumbent in the Buffalo area. Welcome to both of you. Che, your view on what more and more evidence and forecasters see as not only an uphill battle for Republicans in these midterms, but facing a potential rout.
Yeah, and I think that the 2006 example is very, very important here. What happened in 2006 is Democrats won the House, they won the Senate, and the Bush era was effectively over. And then in 2008, the Obama era began. I think we're setting ourselves up for the same thing. And keep in mind, I'm not being overly optimistic or a Pollyanna like SpongeBob SquarePants or, spouting off like really super hopeful things that are pie in the sky. This is very real. If Democrats win the Senate, that means that they will win states that Trump has won by over 10 points. That will mean that they have won rural voters. They will have won all kinds of moderate voters, center-right voters that they had not won before. It will be the beginnings of a major realignment in American politics. And I think the odds of that happening have greatly increased.
It's interesting to hear you say that, Jay. I mean, we're a long way out, and now you're projecting sort of more than one election in a row. But there is a momentum to these things. And the Trump economy is clear. It's almost impossible to argue people out of how bad it's gone for him this summer. I want to show you even the mixed messaging from the administration on that. Take a look at who they say the economy is owned by.
Biden's economic disastrous, reign, Biden's prices that we're still dealing with. It's Biden's disastrous economic record.
There are prices that we're still dealing with in the Biden administration.
Congressman, do you think that's a winning message to just say it's not our fault? And 18 months in, is it not Trump's economy yet?
President Trump was certainly left with a mess to clean up.
You said you inherited a mess from President Biden when it comes to the economy. But at what point is it on you? At what point are we in the Trump economy?
Oh, I'd say we're there now.
Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I think very much the bill has come due here on Donald Trump. Donald Trump has gotten everything he has wanted. He has twice gotten full control of the U.S. government. What problem has he solved? Everything is worse. The economy is worse. Your ability to afford health care, housing, college, that's all worse now. Climate change, worse. The deficit, worse. Our standing in the world, worse. The position of our military, which we're now losing lives in the Middle East, because of something Donald Trump has done. It's all become much worse. The only thing that has improved is Donald Trump's bank account. That has really improved. He is now a multi-billionaire a few times over because of being president of the United States.
Elisa, what do you see both in not only your own race, but in what Democrats are arguing in these midterms?
Well, there's definitely been a massive shift in how people are. I mean, last year we were doing parades during the summer and people were flipping us off and threatening to punch us in the face. And this year we're getting cheers. People are screaming for the Democratic Party as we're going out into rural New York, which may surprise you is very, very rural and very reflective of the nation and our rural areas. People understand what's in their wallet. When it comes down to it, you can only lie for so long.
Yeah. You look at the generic stuff, and you mentioned sort of being outside of an urban area in any state in America. A lot of times it's voters who are thinking about daily life, jobs, economy, schools, and not necessarily political junkies, unlike, say, Jay or myself or all the great, addicted news consumers who might watch the program. And so people tune in more as you get closer. I want to show you a list of the generic ballots we see. Where you got +5, +8, +11, Economist, YouGov, a little closer. What are the issues that you hear voters caring about, meaning what they bring up with you, or what might account for what looks like a widening gap here?
The cost of things. It's affecting everyone, even people who are on the higher end of the middle class. I live in a pretty poor region. The median income here is $41,000 a year, and people are really hurting. When your electric bill is $750 a month, and that's more than your mortgage, there's no spinning that. There's no spinning that.